So welcome to Cycling Informed Cycling Tips. Today I've got Gareth Evans, and Gareth's going to talk to us a little bit about Audax. So Gareth, how did you get into riding? Tell us about...
Oh, well, it's really a family thing. So I grew up cycling. My dad was big into cycling. His father was into cycling, so I guess it's just in the blood.
It's in the blood.
Is it?
You can tell that when you're on the bike. Gareth, it's in the blood. So now you, what are some of your riding achievements that you've?
Oh, well, I'm probably most proud of the 2 Paris-Brest Parises that I've done.
2 of them. I only thought you'd done 1.
Oh, well, it probably feels like I've done about 5, but actually I did the 2007 was my first Paris-Brest Paris, and apparently that was one of the hardest because of the weather conditions.
Really?
Pretty rotten.
It was a bit of an awful one.
Yeah, so we had rain pretty much the whole way. So yeah, a lot of very wet cyclists riding around northern France.
Now you're obviously involved in Audax. So what sort of involvement do you have with Audax?
So I've been on various committees for about the last 6 or 7 years. Currently, I'm vice president of the national body, Audax Australia.
What are some of the things that you want to do with your riding in the future?
Well, I want to do another PBP, and maybe another one after that.
2 more to make it 4.
And maybe another one, you know.
That makes 5.
You know, just keep going. Maybe, you know, I'm still young, hopefully, or in relative terms. So I think I've got a fair bit of cycling in me.
Yeah.
So definitely another Paris-Brest Paris and a few more Alpine Classics.
Fantastic. And we'll talk about the Alpine Classic a little bit later on too. Okay, so now how did you get into Audax?
Actually, it was while I was back in the UK. A work colleague who used to be into triathlons.
Okay.
And he used to do Audax as part of his winter training.
Okay.
And he kept telling me, you know, how much I'd like it, how much I'd enjoy it. So he obviously knew a thing or 2 about me.
Yeah.
So when I came to live in Melbourne in 2004.
Yeah.
And yep, the rest is history.
Tell us a little bit about Audax. What is Audax about?
Audax is really long distance cycling.
Right. Okay.
So at a regional level, for instance, the local clubs are responsible for organising rides and events through the Audax year. National kind of sit over that, and they provide the administrative structure to organise those rides, and they form the link between the club level and Paris, who are the worldwide body.
All right. Lots of countries have Audax organisations.
The way it's split up is there'll be a country will have a national body, and underneath that body there'll be various clubs or regions, depending on how things are set up locally. Okay.
And they all run events?
They certainly do, and lots of them.
You know, where did it all start?
So really, PBP is the start of Audax.
Really? Okay. So Paris-Brest Paris was the start.
So that's really the start of Audax. Back in 1891, the first PBP was run as a professional event with some amateur participation. Okay. And that's really been the call for randonneurs around the world to do it. It's our Olympics.
Right, Audax Olympics.
Yeah.
Paris-Brest Paris.
So to do a Paris-Brest Paris, you have to qualify. Yeah. And the local regions and countries organise the qualifying rides. So that kind of provides a lot of the structure around how things are set up.
What's the general sort of format around the qualifications?
So previously, people just used to turn up.
Right. Okay.
And that was
they had a bike.
They had a bike. They had a set of lights.
way that, yep, okay.
and a lot of optimism.
Yep.
But as the event grew more and more popular, it became necessary to put in some qualifying rides, and that serves two purposes. It assures the organisers that the riders are ready,
yep,
but
sure.
it also provides a framework for the riders to prepare themselves.
Sounds like a pretty serious ride.
It is, yep. It's not the sort of thing you kind of decide, I might do one next week.
Right.
You know, it takes a while to build up to. So,
yeah.
you know, if you're an experienced cyclist, there's a lot of things you still have to learn about before you could sort of take on a 1200k event.
Yeah. Okay, so it's 1200 kilometres and it's in France. So
yep.
what else can you tell us about? You've done two of them.
It's
sounds like a bit of an epic. How long does it normally take the average rider to do?
Well, the average ride is probably taking around 80 to 85 hours. So there's a lot that goes into that. So
right.
Sleep stops, refueling, getting food, taking photographs, meeting locals,
right. Okay.
chatting with old friends. So for some people, it's a social event.
Yep.
And they're probably the ones that are going to be taking the most time that they can.
Right. 80 hours. Yep.
And then there'll be the stars, and they'll be
the faster riders.
Yeah, so they'll be queuing up at the start. They'll be riding in a peloton, and
yep.
for them, it's a competitive. There's a competitive spirit.
Right.
So
but it's not a race.
It's not a race, but there is a certain degree of competition.
Yeah.
You know, they're probably racing against themselves. They'll
yeah.
all have a goal in mind, and they'll want to do a good time. Yeah. So the idea is that they're working as a group and getting to the finish as fast as they can. So those guys will be taking a lot less than 80 hours. They'll probably be around between 40 and 50 hours.
40 and 50 hours. Still a long time on a bike, isn't it?
It's a long time on a bike, and it's even longer when and those guys aren't stopping. So they're through the checkpoints in a matter of minutes. They're not sitting down to have a nice 3-course French meal.
Right.
They're just getting their cards stamped and off they go.
All right. Okay. So what's the story around checkpoints and card stamping?
So
this sounds like an Audax sort of thing. So
yeah, it's part of the law.
The law of Audax.
Of Audax. So brevet cards and homologations are two.
Oh, okay.
You're not an Audax rider unless you know that kind of vocabulary and you're familiar with it. So the brevet is really a card that you carry with you during the event, and you get it signed or stamped at the checkpoint controls. Right. And that's really proof that you've followed the course.
Yep. Okay. And these checkpoints are obviously open for the duration of the event.
They're open. There's a minimum time. There's a minimum time limit
for people to get from checkpoint to checkpoint.
Yeah. Yep. So they'll have closing times. So the idea is that you ride within those time limits, or you're getting around the course in a certain time. So
okay. So what happens if you get there before the time limit? There is no time limit before there.
It depends. Some of the supported rides, it can be a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
You know, if you're going too fast, then you arrive before the support crew and the volunteers. Yep. You can run the risk of having to wait. But there are two types of rides generally.
Yep.
A supported ride where there'll be volunteers and they'll be looking after you at the checkpoints.
Okay.
And they'll be running those checkpoints and providing food and water, etc.
Yeah. So these are not, when you talk about volunteers, they're volunteers from Audax or volunteers?
They're generally from Audax, but they can be in certain circumstances. They can be other. But generally,
outside assistance.
Yeah. Generally, it's from within the club.
So what happens if you don't meet the time limit? Do you get pulled off the road, put in a sag wagon? not part of the event or anymore, or what happens if you don't meet the checkpoints?
Generally, you can. It's at the discretion of the ride organizer.
Right. Okay.
So there can be certain circumstances if you stop to offer someone assistance.
Yeah. Okay.
You can be allowed, extra time.
Yeah. Okay.
If you're, things happen.
Yeah.
But that doesn't include fixing your bike because you get a puncture.
Right. Okay. But doesn't take that long to repair a puncture, does it?
No, if you've had one puncture and you're not meeting the time limit, it's probably a good idea that you pull out.
So is that a common event within the Paris-Brest Paris itself? Are there lots of people not meeting the? Would there be a percentage?
There's always a percentage. It's very difficult to go to an unfamiliar country and ride a good ride. There are so many things to contend with. Yeah. The language barrier for one.
Sure.
Bikes break down. You want to find food.
Yeah.
It can get a bit difficult.
Yeah. But if you're organised and you've done your preparation, shouldn't have any problems.
No problems. The time limits are fairly generous. Yeah. So a reasonably fit rider could do it. And
you were talking about an average speed of about 15 kilometres an hour.
Yeah, so that includes sleep stops as well. So generally you build up a buffer, and then that allows you time to get off the bike and eat and do whatever you want to do and have a sleep.
Yeah, so generally the event's organised, so over that distance they say the average speed you should ride is about 15, minimum is 15 kilometres an hour, but that includes sleep stops. So so if you were to jump on your bike and ride at 15 kilometres an hour, then the checkpoints are set up for that regardless of whether, without getting off your bike. So,
yes, yeah.
So obviously you need to ride a little bit faster than 15 kilometres an hour to make sure that you've got time to sleep. Because some of these events are, Paris, I mean 80 hours, Yeah.
So a general rule of thumb is you should be leaving a checkpoint an hour before it closes.
Right. Okay.
If you're getting off to have a sleep or you need to need to eat, you should really be on your bike and leaving an hour before the checkpoint closes.
So for an event like the Paris-Brest Paris, you would set up your own accommodation points or sleep stops, or is that organised by?
That's organised by the club.
All right. So. And would you need a sleeping bag to carry with you, or?
No, they run dormitories.
Right.
So they'll set up. They're often at local schools and colleges. Yeah. Okay. And they'll turn the gymnasium into a dormitory. So if you can imagine,
like a stretcher.
Yep, 200 stretcher beds.
Oh, okay.
With blackouts on the windows.
Okay.
And each of the beds, it's a bit like the hospital. Each of the beds has got a wake up time.
Right, okay.
So the riders are coming in, swapping, and so you turn up. There's generally showers. Get a cafeteria, so eat,
food,
wash, sleep.
Pasta and wine, huh?
Pasta and wine if you want to go with the French way of doing things. Pasta and beer if you're a bit more German.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. A bit more German, pasta and beer. Fantastic. That's awesome. That sounds great. So it's all. So you basically got to rock up for your bike. You've done your qualifications, and then you've got these rest stops where you can go to sleep. Now, when you talked about the wake up call, is that somebody would come around and tap you on the shoulder and go, time to get up, and then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they're just going around and monitoring that all the time.
Yeah. So they have the team of volunteers. When you arrive, you tell them how long you want to sleep.
Right. Okay.
And they come and get you when it's ready.
So there's no alarms going off in that.
No, hopefully not.
Okay,
hopefully not. But good tip is to bring earplugs.
Earplugs. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. So so tell us about, so that's Paris-Brest Paris and a little bit about checkpoints and stuff like that. So to qualify for that and to do, obviously Audax Australia run events, you don't necessarily need to qualify for Paris-Brest Paris. You can just rock up and ride the Audax events here in Australia or in the country that you're.
Yep.
So what are some of the general sort of rules around riding Audax events? I mean, you've already mentioned that it's not a race, and you've mentioned that you've got these checkpoints and you've got a little card that you need to get stamped. Or so what are some of the other criteria around Audax events that?
So it's so obviously you have to follow the Australian road rules as a vehicle. That goes without saying.
So, and the rules within your country. So if you're in America, you would be riding on the right-hand side of the road. And if you're in Australia, you'd be.
And that also extends to night riding. So when you get to events that could potentially finish during the hours of darkness, then you'll need to have a set of lights and a reflective vest of some sort.
Right.
That's the that's the sort of minimum equipment.
Yep.
There are rules. There are rules about riding, but really, it's quite it's common sense.
It's common sense.
You know, you can only ride with people who are in your event, so you can't recruit a team of pacers.
Right, or a motorbike.
Or a motorbike.
To motivate. Okay.
Get you motivated. No, so those kind of the obvious things are not allowed.
Right.
You're also the kind of the ethos of Audax is to be self-sufficient, and there's a degree of self-sufficiency which is required. Yeah. So you're not meant to have support between checkpoints. Right. You can have support at a checkpoint, but not between. So if your bike breaks down, you're expected to fix it. There's you can't recruit a team car to change your wheel or something.
So it's not uncommon for some Audax riders to carry spare inner tubes and tyres and spokes and chains, and chain tools and also sleeping equipment like a little bivvy and stuff like that. So there's kind of like a tourist grade of Audax rider where they very independent, saddlebags and everything they need to ride.
Yeah, that's people come from Audax from various other cycling disciplines, and that's sometimes reflected on the equipment that they carry.
Right.
So some people really want to make sure that they have enough equipment to get to the finish.
Yeah. Very independent type of ride.
Yeah, very much. I've got everything I need. Anything goes wrong, and I can fix it. Yeah. And sometimes you just learn by experience. And the simplest things. A friend broke a skewer on his back wheel and tried to fix it with cable ties, and he was between checkpoints, and there's just no way he was going to be able to finish the ride. But another rider said, "Hey, guess what?
I've got a spare skewer in my pannier bag.
Yeah.
So here you go."
So
amazing.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of camaraderie.
Oh yeah.
Within the riders, yeah.
So I'll lend you my spare tyre.
Yeah.
But you've got to ride with me, and if I get a puncture, you're going to give it back.
Yeah. Sure. Okay. Yeah. I mean that makes sense. Okay. So that's sort of the tourist grade of Audax rider, but there's other riders that do attend the event.
Yeah.
All the events, Audax events. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of people take the viewpoint that they're going to carry the absolute minimum.
Yep.
And
that's the sort of rider I would be. It's like, I don't want to carry anything that I don't need. I'd be like I was riding a recreational event or a race. It was like the bare minimum. So you obviously have riders like that attend Audax events.
There are, but what generally happens is on the shorter distances, there's probably less at play. So if you break your chain, okay, you didn't finish the ride, but hey, what the hell? It didn't really. There was nothing. It wasn't like I was going to use that ride to qualify for something. But as the distances go up, and especially if you're going to be doing a bit of night riding, you're looking at maybe a few hours by the side of the road. Unless you've got a very understanding wife who's close by, the stakes are a little bit higher. So people tend to carry a little bit more, and a lot of that,
because you're talking about a big ride. You're talking about a ride that would, like not a 200 that you could obviously cover off in a day. You're talking about a ride maybe a 500 or something like that.
Yeah. So if you're going up the distances to a 300 or a 400, or even a 600, you could get to the last 50 Ks and you break a gear cable. Okay, you could maybe get through.
Sure.
But for the sake of carrying a cable, would it be worth it? and those rides, there's a lot at stake. You know, it might be the only 600 you're doing that year. There might not be another one coming up.
Sure. Yeah.
People tend to look at that differently.
Yeah.
And then there's the safety aspect of, you know, carrying a decent jacket, you know, a rainproof jacket. And things like that.
Yeah, but, you know, if I was riding through the night, you know, in winter, it'd be a mandatory requirement that I'd have a rain jacket. I mean, I was out riding today with a rain jacket because it was raining. So, you know, and I spent majority of the ride wearing it. So, but that's not an uncommon piece of equipment that you would expect to take on a longer ride anyway. Just especially if you're on a ride that involves, you know, climbing and descending off fairly big, not necessarily mountains, but fairly big hills, and where you're exposed to sort of big variations in temperatures. So, which, you know, we didn't encounter today, but you know, just something that you'd need to keep warm. So so
you can cover a lot of distance in an Audax ride, and you can go through a lot of different terrain. So at one point you might be out on the you know, in desert conditions, and then you know, it's conceivable that within 300 k's you could be back in the mountains. And the equipment that you need may
vary.
May vary.
But you know, you can also, if you've got your accommodation set up and your ride schedule sorted out, then you can have gear drops, like you know, and you would have accommodation booked in. So you'd have, you know, this is where I'm going to be sleeping for a few hours, or, you know, 6 hours or whatever. You know, if you're a faster rider, you could effectively.
So there's and that, as we were saying earlier, that comes down to the style of rider. And there are some riders who want to take on that level of organisation, and for them it's important that, you know, they've got their bag drops sorted out, and they've got the equipment they need. So they might have special dietary requirements, so they want a certain type of food to eat during the ride, and that'll be in their drop bag. Whereas, you know, the other type of rider, the completely self-sufficient rider, will say, no, I don't want drop bags. If I need it, I carry it. And then, you know, and that allows them, they're of the mindset that, you know, something could go wrong with their drop bag, and in which case.
But we're talking. So and you can, that support carries on to checkpoints as well. So you could have a drop bag or a person supporting you at a checkpoint, and they could have, you know, for example, if the ride was going into a more mountainous terrain, they could have a clothing change at that checkpoint. They could pick up additional food. And you know, if there was anything broken with their bike, they could, you know, get that sorted out. If it was more major than, you know, just a puncture or something like that, they could get that support at a checkpoint.
When in Brest, Paris, there's quite a lot of that goes on, and it's not uncommon to see camper Winnebagos queued up
at checkpoints.
Queued up at checkpoints, and the riders will be going there and doing everything that they could do at the checkpoint, but, you know, they've got their own system sorted out, so they'll be changing their kit. So it's not uncommon to see Italian riders looking looking immaculate for the whole ride, because they might have taken, you know, they might be getting their kit washed. Washed and ironed.
Or they just replacing it at every checkpoint.
A new kit. So that they look, you know, you can tell the Italians, they always look really top notch.
Primo. Fantastic. That's awesome. So what we're talking about here is a wide diversity of the types of riders that would attend an Audax event. So. Fantastic.
That's a key element to Audax, and they're quite, you know, the club's quite proud that that it can accommodate all those different styles of rider, and with their different goals.
So what sort of goals would the Audax riders have?
So in terms of a season, they may be looking to achieve a certain amount of kilometres on certain rides to get a specific award.
Now I've heard that Audax riders are awarded because it's not a race. You have awards for different levels. So we'll talk about that. But so just coming back to the type. So just continue on about.
Oh, the type of rides.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So really, it's based around distance in the main part. So we have the popular event. Sorry, I'll start again. So we have the standard events: the 2, the 3, the 4, the 600, the 1000, and the 1200. So what tends to happen is then we have supported and unsupported rides.
Right, okay.
So, and that kind of fits in with the type of riders that come to events. Yeah, so the level of support versus the self-sufficient aspect. So there are a lot of riders that feel very strongly about doing rides unsupported, and a lot of riders want the support. So, you know, it's a difficult balance if you're running a long ride to find suitable places to stop, you know, cafes, 24-hour servos.
Yeah, sure.
You know, you can be really stretched, so you might need to run a supported control in the middle of the night in some far-off location, because there's no alternative. So that really kind of, that sort of splits what we do down the middle. So we have the big supported events, and like the Alpine Classic, that's probably one of our major supported events.
Yeah, okay.
And a lot of our 1200s, so we'll have a marquee 1200 each year, and they'll generally be supported. And that's a kind of, that's sort of, but not born out of necessity, but almost.
Yeah, yeah, but it means that you can attract more riders to the...
And it gives the riders a certain amount of security and the knowledge that if, you know, there's a bit of a safety net there, if things go wrong, you know, they're not going to be stranded.
Sure, okay. So let's come back to the awards. So you've mentioned that, you know, Audax riders are awarded. So there's various awards that are offered throughout the, well, for the year, yeah?
Yep. Yeah, so so the sort of...
So when you do a ride, you get...
Okay, so we'll go back to the brevet cards. Yep. So the brevet cards are really important because that's your proof of completing a ride. Okay. So at the end of the ride, you know, you don't get to keep it. You have to hand it back to your ride organizer, which can be a bit upsetting for some riders. But we promise to return them.
Very attached to it.
Again, yeah, you know, it's kind of like
a
bit of memorabilia.
Yeah.
But it does get returned, and in the meantime it gets homologated. So that means that the number is recorded, it goes on our database, and it's official.
Yeah.
And that's important for a lot of our rides are homologated through France.
Okay.
We do a lot of homologation ourselves locally, but rides that qualify for Paris-Brest Paris are homologated by the French.
Okay.
So now you've got your card back, it's official, it's been stamped, and it's got a number, and then you collect those cards, and at the end of the season you can use them to apply for your award.
Right, okay.
So there's a range of awards, and you know, from the nouveau randonneur, so that's for people you know, coming into the club. Or
that would be me.
Or next year.
Nouveau randonneur.
Randonneur. So and riders kind of coming back from injury, that might be, you know, that might be an interesting award for them. So that's a pretty basic, and that's where it starts. So that's a 50, a 100, a 150. So, you know, if you're coming in, it's a good starting point.
Yeah.
And then once you're established, there are awards. A single season award, maybe the Super Randonneur. So that's a bit of a benchmark, and that kind of, a lot of riders who, I don't know, take Audax and randonneuring seriously. That would be their kind of that would be their goal, and that's a 200, a 300, a 400, and a 600 in the calendar year, and that's especially significant because those are the rides that you need to qualify for Paris-Brest Paris. So it kind of that sets the benchmark.
So so what sort of goals do riders have? Obviously they've got these awards, but you know, there must be various reasons for riders to ride Audax events.
Oh, it's such a personal thing. Apart from the mere accumulation of kilometers, it's a really hard question, and every rider's going to have a different answer. For myself, I find it very rewarding to get out there on my bike and do something that a lot of people thinks,
superhuman.
Yeah, pretty impossible. But
you could use Audax events for training.
Yeah,
building up base K, something to motivate you through the winter.
Yeah, it's a great. One of the awards that I've been following has been the year-round randonneur, and that involves doing a 200 or more each calendar month. So, and that's a great way of sustaining yourself through the winter and keeping your fitness up for doing the longer rides around the year. So that's a great award. Some people really go all out and they just want to ride their bikes. So there's some pretty phenomenal riding going on. So it just depends on how much time you've got available.
Yeah, sure. I understand it's always a big limiter. But so would it not be uncommon for having people doing triathlon events, doing Audax events as part of their training, or racing cyclists doing events as prep for racing events?
Yeah, you see a lot of different people coming to events, and what happens. A lot of the clubs will have a particular event that they're quite fond of, and they'll come up and they'll do it en masse, as it were. Right. Okay. So the club will this is our event for the year, and we want everybody to and you see a big participation. And
wow, fantastic. So so here in Australia, for me, the biggest Audax event that I know of is the Alpine Classic.
We're very fortunate through the team, a dedicated team of volunteers to have the Alpine Classic. Right. It's after Paris, Brest, Paris, it's the biggest Audax event in the world.
Really? Okay. So I never knew that.
And it's I think there's some big events. Audax is very popular in Brazil, and they have some pretty big events down there. But I think we're still just ahead, just ahead of them. So
So the Alpine Classic's got, and it's usually a bit of an entry level for a lot of people getting into Audax events, isn't it? Because you've got quite a few different distanced events within the Alpine Classic.
Yeah, so over the years it started off as just the 200, right? And they've slowly developed each year, adding something a little bit different. So so you can there's a 70, the Buffalo Return, Falls Creek. There's a lot of different rides. Right. And that's great. If a 200 could be quite daunting. Yeah. A 200 in the Alps can be even more daunting.
Because it's run in my favourite area of Australia, which is obviously Bright, which is the Alpine area of Australia. We obviously run our boot camps, and we used to run our boot camps on the same weekend as the Audax. We haven't done that in recent times because resources are pretty stretched, and you end up getting caught up in lots of other riders riding around the area, and accommodations, a bit of an issue and things. So we moved our boot camp off that weekend, but it's an awesome area for riding. So it's a great the Alpine Classic's kind of a good entry into here in Australia into Audax events.
It's we get a lot of new members coming to us through the Alpine Classic. Yeah. They discover that Audax is more than just the Alpine, and start looking for another challenge.
Because they're big rides. 600s, it's 1200s. Yeah, those are big rides, aren't they? They're really challenging if you're into that sort of ultra endurance and stuff. So really, some of the events, obviously the 200s and stuff like that. Do you do events 100 kilometres long? We do. We often have, if we're running a 200, we'll often have a 100 as well. Okay. Yep. So, so anybody that's doing recreational events here in Australia, would quite comfortably be able to rock up to 100 event, 100 kilometre event, and just ride it, and then, you know, then they could aspire to maybe a 200, and then from there they could do the next step up is a
200, then the 300.
300, yep. Okay.
So really, the 200's quite, you know, it's in the summer months you could do it in daylight. The 300, you know, you're on the cusp there.
Yeah, sure.
The 400, you're getting into some serious night riding.
Yep.
And then the 600, you're really starting to look at a multi-day ride. So
multi-day ride with a bit of a sleep in between.
With a bit of a sleep in between, yeah.
Wow, fantastic. So now we talked. It's not a race. So but there are a lot of awards that are given out. Mudguards and lights. Obviously, if the event's longer, so if it's a 400.
If it's a 400, well, the rules are that if the event starts or finishes in darkness.
Yep.
So, and that's based around the 15-hour time rule.
Sure. Okay.
15 kilometre an hour speed, minimum speed.
Yep.
You have to carry
that's on the website. What the
requirements
are for the lights,
and that's the same for everyone.
And, and it's a safety thing. I mean, you don't want people riding an Audax event at night with no lights. That's a bit stupid, really.
It's a bit,
and there's a duty of care that obviously organisers have to.
Well, and that really that's coming home to a lot of clubs now. And if we had riders who are finishing the ride, you know, things happen. You know, we get a puncture, and you help someone out, and you know they bonk, and you know you're finishing the ride slowly, and you're getting into darkness, and you don't have lights, and the police spot you, and
then there's a whole lot of issues.
There's a lot of it's just not worth it.
Yeah, so I totally understand that. That's and look, I wouldn't want to be involved in an event that was run where that sort of stuff was just not important. I think having lights on a bike's it's really important things. So.
Yeah, I mean the advantage is having lights on bikes means that you can start a lot earlier.
Yeah,
so we've seen this year we had the 4 a.m. start, sunrise over Buffalo, the early start on the Ace. So the riders were setting off to do the 250 loop over Hotham at 4 a.m. So and with the weather conditions as they are, with the extreme heat, being able to start a ride early.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Especially here in Australia.
And the roads are so quiet.
Yeah.
It's, really it's a win-win. It's a win-win. And really, riding at night, it's not like you finish work and you've got to go home and it's wet and raining.
Sure.
It's not like riding on a commute.
Yeah.
Riding at night when you're out in the country and the stars and the animal, the wildlife, the roads are quiet. Really, it's something really every cyclist should experience.
Really in the groove.
Yeah.
Awesome. And of course, I was riding with lights today during the day because it was an overcast day. It was raining, visibility was down.
Yeah.
And just for me, that's important. I was out on a country road and. It's just nice to be visible. So, all right. So, now mudguards.
Mudguards are optional.
Optional?
They are.
Optional.
Yeah.
So is that a new ruling or is that?
I think that's been around for quite a while.
Right, okay.
I think that's old news. Old news. But
so mudguards, you don't have to have mudguards.
You don't have to have, but you have to have a high resistance to being sprayed in the face.
Yeah, sure, yeah. Well, I mean, it's nice riding with mudguards.
It is.
When it's really wet.
When we go to Paris, you can spot the North Americans or the Northwest because they've all got mudguards.
Right, all got mudguards.
Yeah, the guys from Seattle Randonneurs, their mudguards, if their mudguards don't go all the way down, their mud flaps practically touch the ground.
Right, so it's a big thing over there.
For them, and I think that's, like you say, it rains every day in Seattle, so, you would.
So regional things.
Regional differences, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, okay. So you've talked about the Italians, obviously, with their, Primo kit. So how do you get involved in Audax?
Well,
where do you find more information about it?
Best place to find information is on our website.
Yeah, website, Audax.
Website.
So if you just did a Google in your local area.
Audax Australia.
Audax Japan, Audax America.
Yeah, you're going to see a lot of Audax clubs.
Right,
audax.org.au, and that'll take you right in. So we have a list of events. We have our online calendar. look through the calendar.
Yep.
There are descriptions of the rides.
Yep.
When you see one you like that's in your area, either register online or contact the ride organizer,
right, okay.
and they're more than happy to give you all the details that you want. And and you can, they'll discuss Audax. If you've got any questions, about lights, about support, about what's available during the ride, the routes.
Yeah.
Nothing's too much trouble.
They're the people to contact. Fantastic. Yep. All right. Well, Gareth, it's been awesome.
Thank you.
I've learnt a lot about Audax riding now. So I really appreciate you taking the time to having a chat to us.
You're very welcome.
And I hope that's been useful to people that are watching this.